The storm hit just after midnight, and the roof of Trinity House sounded like it might cave in. I was wide awake, lying on a plastic-covered mattress that had crinkled with every twitch all my life. The wind howled outside like it was mourning something. The fluorescent light in the hallway flickered through the half-cracked door, casting long, thin shadows across the ceiling. My duffel bag was already packed and sitting by the door. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, a toothbrush, and 1 yellowed envelope I hadn't stopped staring at for hours. It was my last night here. Tomorrow I'd be 18 and officially no longer the state's problem. No foster homes, no caseworkers, no more locked curfews and supervised phone calls. Just me and the world. But freedom, it turns out, is terrifying when you've got no one to call and nowhere to go. There was a tap on the doorframe. Mrs. Cole stood there, the overnight staff supervisor, with her tight ponytail and perma-frown. She didn't step inside, she never did. "You're up," she said. I didn't sleep. She nodded, glanced at the bag, then at the envelope in my hands. "You want to come sign out early? Paperwork's ready." I stood, grabbed the bag, and followed her down the dim hallway, like a shadow with no choice but to move. Her office was small, colder than the rest of the building. The storm had killed the heat again. She slid the final forms across the desk without looking at me. "You're officially discharged from Trinity House effective 6:00 a.m., but you can go now if you want." She tapped her pen against the form. "Sign here." I signed. She handed me the manila folder. Birth certificate, vaccination records, school transcripts. Whatever we had. Then, as if it were nothing, she dropped a small envelope onto the table. It was old, worn at the corners, my name written in faded cursive across the front. Noah Carter. That was my name, but not the way anyone ever wrote it. I looked up at her, but she was already turning toward her computer. "What is this?" She glanced over. "That was in your intake file. We don't usually give those out, unless someone ages out without placement. Most of the time, there's nothing useful." Inside the envelope was a brass key, tarnished with time attached to a strip of cracked leather. On the tag, Sweetwater Farm. There was also a note handwritten in firm, angled script for Noah when he's old enough to understand. "Nobody left you anything but this. Use it when you're ready. The tractor knows. R.C." The tractor knows. I stared at those 3 words, something electric passing under my skin. I flipped the key over and over in my hand. For the first time in my life, something didn't feel random. It felt chosen. "You ever hear of this place?" I asked Mrs. Cole. She shook her head. "Never came up in your records." Probably nothing. But I wasn't so sure. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle by the time I left the building, the sky heavy with the smell of wet concrete and decaying leaves. I walked through the city like a ghost, with no destination, my sneakers soaked through, gripping the key in my jacket pocket, like it could pull me forward. I had $48 in cash from the state, and a Greyhound bus voucher I hadn't used yet. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew where I had to start. The library. Miss Hargrove had been the librarian at the Midtown Public Library since before I was born. She was old school, kept her coffee in a thermos, wore cardigans with elbow patches, and didn't like when kids ran between the stacks. But she'd always been kind to me. When I walked in, she blinked, surprised to see me this early. "Noah. Thought today was the big day." "It is." I dropped my duffel at my usual computer terminal and pulled out the key. "Miss Hargrove, have you ever heard of a place called Sweetwater Farm?" She took the key, holding it like it might dissolve in her fingers. "Sweetwater," she repeated, frowning. That sounds like a town more than a farm. I showed her the note. Her eyes widened slightly at the signature. R.C. She stepped back, thoughtful. Give me a minute. She disappeared into the archives, while I sat trying not to imagine a world where this led nowhere. But 15 minutes later, she came back holding a thin binder. Found this in the local historical index. Sweetwater Farm was a working property out in Jasper County, about 150 miles from here. Was run by a man named Robert Carter. My heart stuttered. She continued. Closed up around 2009 after he passed. No known heirs. The place just sat. County tried to auction it, but no one bid. Robert Carter, I said aloud. R.C. Miss Hargrove looked at me again, this time slower. Noah, your last name's Carter too, isn't it? I nodded, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I might belong to something that had a name. That night, I used the last of my cash to catch a late bus heading north. I slept with my head against the window, the rumble of tires, a quiet reminder that I was finally moving. Not running. Not being moved. Moving by choice. When I woke up, the city was gone. All that stretched out around me were fields, trees, and a horizon that breathed wider than anything I'd ever known. Willow Creek wasn't even on most maps. But it showed up on the list. Miss Hargrove gave me a dot next to a road called Miller Lane. According to her, that was where the farm used to be. The bus driver let me off at a gas station that looked like it hadn't updated its prices since the 90s. Across the street, a diner buzzed quietly under a flickering neon sign, Ruby's. I stepped inside, cold and nervous, the brass key burning in my pocket, like it knew I was getting closer. Seat yourself, Han, the waitress called without looking. I slid into a booth near the window and pulled out the key again. That's when I heard someone behind the counter say, "Ain't nobody asked about Sweetwater in damn near 15 years." I turned slowly. A guy my age leaned against the kitchen door, wiping his hands on a rag. He was tall with work boots and grease-stained jeans. He was looking straight at me. "You got a connection to that place?" he asked. I met his eyes. "I think I might." The guy behind the counter didn't move at first. He just watched me like he wasn't sure whether to ask me to leave or buy me a coffee. I was used to that look. It was the same one people gave when they didn't know where to place you, somewhere between harmless and trouble. I tightened my grip on the key in my pocket. He finally stepped closer, wiping his hands on a faded dish towel. "You said you might have a connection to Sweetwater." I nodded. "I think it might have belonged to someone in my family." He squinted. "Whose family?" "Robert Carter," I said. "You know him." A silence spread between us. He looked me over more carefully now, not just suspicious, curious. "He was my grandfather," I added, and it felt strange saying it out loud, like testing a word you'd never spoken. He snorted, not mocking exactly, just surprised. "Well, hell. Didn't know Carter had any family left." "I didn't either. Not until 2 days ago." Another pause. Then he reached out his hand. "Tyler Brooks." "Noah," I said, shaking it. "Carter, right," I nodded. "Noah Carter." Tyler sat across from me, flipping the rag in his hand like it helped him think. "Sweetwater's about 5 miles east of here. Old road. Kinda rough. The county doesn't even maintain it anymore." "You got a ride?" I shook my head. "Just got off the Greyhound." He leaned back. "Figured. You've got that lost on purpose look." I smiled slightly, though I wasn't sure if it was meant as a joke. "You ever been out there a few times? Back when I was a kid?" My uncle did maintenance on the place after Carter died, but it's been boarded up since. Most people stay away. Why hard to say? Some think it's haunted. Others just think it's sad. Sad felt more accurate. He looked down at the table, then back at me. Look, my shift ends in about 30. I can take you out there if you want. But I ain't going inside. That's fair. Tyler stood and gave me a once-over. You eat yet? Not really. Then you're getting the biscuits and gravy. Ruby'd kill me if I let someone in here hungry. He disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me with more questions than answers. The whole town felt like it had frozen in time, like whatever happened at Sweetwater had pressed pause on the people who stayed behind. When he returned with a steaming plate and 2 coffees, I realized I hadn't eaten since yesterday. I inhaled the food like it might vanish while Tyler sat across from me again, sipping his coffee slowly. You ever been out here before? He asked. No. I've spent my whole life in the city. Foster care group homes. Sweetwater. It's the first thing I've ever had that felt like it was actually mine. He was quiet for a moment, then said, If the past wants to be found, it'll leave you a trail. Maybe that's what this is. I stared down at the key, resting beside my fork, the word Sweetwater catching the light. Or maybe it's just a ghost. Sometimes ghosts are what we need to find what's real, he said. When we finished eating, Tyler grabbed his truck keys from behind the counter and led me outside. His truck was an old Ford with peeling paint and a cracked windshield, but it roared to life with a single turn of the key. The inside smelled like motor oil and pine air freshener. The road out of town was narrow, winding through rolling hills and woods that hadn't seen a chainsaw in decades. Trees arched overhead like they were trying to keep secrets. Every so often we passed old barns collapsed into themselves or rusted signs for churches long gone. Tyler spoke only once on the drive. My uncle used to say Carter was a good man, kept to himself. Never went to church, but he'd leave boxes of vegetables at people's doors. Fixed fences no one asked him to fix. He sounds kind, I said. He was. But he looked like someone who'd lost a war and didn't want to talk about it. I looked out the window, heart beating faster with every mile. It felt like something was pulling us forward, not just the truck, something older, like gravity from another lifetime. Finally, we turned onto a gravel path almost hidden by undergrowth. A wooden sign barely hanging on a nail read, Sweetwater Farm. The letters were sun-bleached, barely legible, but they hit me like thunder. The driveway twisted through overgrown fields, goldenrod and tall grass, choking what once must have been pristine land. At the end of the path stood a farmhouse with weathered white paint and shutters hanging loose. Beside it a red barn slouched under its own weight, the roof sunken like an old man's back. And under a lean-to beside the barn, partially swallowed by weeds, sat the tractor. My throat closed. There it is, Tyler said quietly, just like it was. We got out of the truck. The silence around us was thick, no wind, no birds, just the creak of the truck cooling and the crunch of gravel under our feet. I approached the tractor, slowly drawn to it, like it knew I was coming. It was ancient. Faded green paint flaked off in sheets. Rust bloomed across the metal like bruises. But it was there, waiting. I reached out and brushed my fingers along the frame, and there it was, stamped into a metal plate near the engine R. Carter, 1967. For Noah always. My knees buckled, but I stayed upright. He knew me. He knew I'd come. Holy shit, Tyler whispered behind me. I crouched and searched around the seat. It looked like it could be lifted, and after a few hard pulls, the hinges groaned open. Beneath it sat a wooden box wrapped in an old oilcloth. I pulled it free, brushing off the grime. The key, the one I'd carried from Trinity House, fit the brass lock perfectly. I turned it. The click echoed in my bones. Inside was a photo. A woman my mother held a newborn wrapped in a yellow blanket. Me. The same blanket I still had folded in my bow. Her eyes were soft but afraid. The back read June and Noah, 3 days old. There was also a letter. I didn't read it right away. I just stared at that photo until my fingers trembled. Tyler stepped back. "I'll be in the truck. Take your time." He left me alone. With the tractor. With the truth. With the past finally cracking open just enough for the light to get in. The letter was heavy in my hand, sealed with wax, and the initials RC. I hadn't even opened it yet, and I already knew nothing in my life would be the same after I did. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight, I had a place to sleep, a porch, a roof, a key, and a beginning. That's what Tyler said the next morning as we drove back into town. He said it casually, like someone tossing a warning over their shoulder. But it stuck with me. The kind of sentence that followed you into your bones. I hadn't slept much the night before. I stayed at the farm until after the sun dipped below the hills and the sky turned violet. Tyler waited in his truck the whole time, engine off, arms crossed, watching the tree line like it might blink. He didn't ask about the photo or the letter. I didn't offer anything. We weren't at that kind of trust yet. Now back in his truck, bouncing down cracked roads toward Willow Creek, I couldn't stop thinking about what was inside that envelope. The letter still sat in my back pocket unopened. I wasn't sure why I hadn't read it yet. Maybe because once I did, there'd be no turning back. Whatever it said, it would mean my life had a shape now, a direction, and that was terrifying. Tyler broke the silence. "So, what happens next? You gonna live there?" I don't know yet," I said. "There's a lawyer in town I'm supposed to see. My grandfather left instructions." "That sounds like a Carter move." "You knew him," Tyler shrugged. "Everyone around here knew him. Not well, but enough. He didn't talk much, but he helped people. Fixed broken things without being asked. Never asked for anything in return. He sounds better than the stories I've heard." He looked over at me briefly. "Well, sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who never say it out loud." That silenced me. Because yeah, maybe that's what this was. A silent kind of love. The kind that buried itself in metal and wood and folded letters sealed with wax. Downtown Willow Creek wasn't much a single main street with angled parking, a barber shop with a spinning pole, a hardware store that looked like it hadn't restocked since the 80s, and a brick law office with gold lettering on the window, Harrison and McBride Est. 1979. Tyler pulled into a spot near the curb. "You want me to come in?" he asked. I shook my head. "I think this part I need to do alone." He nodded and handed me a folded napkin. Inside were 3 strips of bacon and a biscuit. "Breakfast. Rubies would kill me if I let you walk in hungry again." I smiled, more grateful than I knew how to say. The bell over the law office door jingled as I stepped inside. It smelled like old paper coffee and lemon wood polish. A middle-aged woman behind the desk looked up and smiled gently. "You must be Noah," she said. "Mr. Harrison's expecting you." She buzzed a small intercom. "David. He's here." A door opened to my left, and a tall man with silver hair and round glasses stepped out. His suit was neat but not expensive, and he moved with the kind of calm that comes from doing a job for a long time. "Noah Carter," he said warmly. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." We shook hands. His grip was firm but kind. He gestured toward a room behind him. "Come in, sit. We have a lot to go over." His office was small and packed bookshelves, dusty ledgers, stacks of yellowed files, a diploma from Emory on the wall. "I didn't know anyone was expecting me," I said, as I sat. He gave a small smile. 14 years ago, your grandfather came into this office. Told me a young man named Noah would walk through this door one day with a key and a letter. He said if that day ever came, everything he left behind would belong to you. He walked to a file cabinet and pulled out a thick folder with my name on it. "You found the farm," he said, more statement than question. I did. "And the tractor," I nodded. "And the letter." He tapped the desk. "Then it's time." He laid the folder open and began pulling out documents, a land deed, a trust agreement, a property survey, a maintenance account. All signed, notarized, sealed with legal dust. "Your grandfather owned 143 acres, David said. Sweetwater Farm, as it's still legally known. It includes the farmhouse, the barn, 2 equipment sheds, and a small pond near the eastern boundary." I stared at the map he handed me, the lines of the property. It looked like a kingdom. I'd never even owned a drawer that was mine. Now this. He also set aside $18,000 in a trust, David continued, to cover property taxes and basic maintenance for 15 years. There's about $3,400 left. My throat went dry. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because Robert didn't want anyone to know. He structured the trust to be conditional. You had to find it yourself. Had to be ready. I looked at him, trying to understand. "Why he believed in legacy," David said simply, "and that the right people find their way to what they're meant to inherit." I sat back, overwhelmed. "So what now?" He smiled. "You sign a few papers. I file them with the county. In 7 days, you're legally the owner of Sweetwater Farm." I signed my name on more documents than I'd seen in my life. Every time I wrote Noah Carter, the name felt more real. David slid a small envelope toward me at the end. "These are the house keys. The front door's probably stiff. It hasn't been opened in years." I stood gripping the envelope. "There's one more thing," he said as I reached the door. "Robert asked me to tell you, the farm's not just yours. It's yours to fix, yours to bring back." I turned back. "Fix?" He nodded. Sweetwater wasn't just land to him. It was memory, history, family. He wanted someone who remembered that, someone who needed it. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and left. Outside, Tyler leaned against the truck, chewing a toothpick. "Well," he asked. I held up the keys. "It's mine. Legally." He whooped. "Hell yeah, man. Congratulations." But I wasn't smiling, because I could already feel the weight of it. The ghosts, the broken floorboards, the unanswered questions. He opened the truck door for me. "You ready to go back?" I stared down the street, past the quiet storefronts, and toward the hills. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go home." The road back felt different. I sat with the folder on my lap, pages thick with promises and conditions. I had a week until the land was mine. A week to figure out what it meant to fix something that had been broken for so long. By the time we reached the farmhouse again, the sun was low. Dust swirled in golden light as Tyler parked the truck. "You sure you're good out here?" he asked. I have to be. He handed me a flashlight. That door's gonna fight you. Don't let it win. He pulled away slowly, his taillights disappearing into the trees. I stood alone on the porch, keys in hand. The air smelled like damp wood and the faint memory of rain. The front door creaked, resistant at first, then gave way. The house greeted me with silence. I stepped inside and the air closed around me like a book being opened to the middle pages, already worn story half told. Somewhere upstairs, a door clicked shut on its own. I didn't flinch. Because whatever waited here, I was ready. The floor groaned beneath me like it was warning me not to go any farther. The flashlight beam shook in my hand as I stepped deeper into the farmhouse, dust dancing through the beam like ghosts caught mid-sentence. The air was thick with stillness, like this place had been holding its breath since the last person left. I stood in the living room, taking it in the stone fireplace, the sagging couch covered in a faded quilt, a record player in the corner layered with cobwebs. Everything looked like someone had just stepped out for a moment, but the moment never ended. Upstairs creaked again. I stared at the staircase, not ready for it yet. Instead, I turned toward the kitchen, drawn by a memory I didn't have but felt anyway. The cabinets were a pale yellow, chipped at the edges. The sink was porcelain, rust-stained and dry. There was still a sugar canister on the counter, a film of time coating it. I set my bag down and opened the envelope from David. 4 house keys. 1 to the front door, 1 to the side, and 2 unlabeled. I pocketed them all. The letter from Robert, the one I still hadn't read, burned in my jacket like it had its own pulse. But first, I had to see the house. I finally climbed the stairs, one hand on the railing, the other steadying the flashlight. The second-floor hallway was lined with wallpaper curling at the corners. 3 doors, 2 on the left, 1 at the end. I opened the first door slowly. A guest room. Twin bed, dresser, dusty lamp, nothing special. The second room was different. I stepped inside and froze. Lavender walls, a bookshelf full of worn children's books, a child-sized bed with a faded patchwork quilt folded at the foot, a dresser with stickers peeling off, and on top of it, a photo in a small wooden frame. A girl, maybe 5 or 6, grinned into the camera. Her smile was wide, her front teeth missing. Her hair was dark and curled, her eyes lit with a joy I couldn't quite place. I didn't need to read the back of the photo to know her name. June. This was her room, the girl who'd grown up and become my mother. The bed was too small for me, but I sat on the edge anyway. The quilt smelled faintly of cedar. It had been folded with care, preserved, not abandoned. He kept it just like this, I thought. He never changed a thing. The tractor knew my name before I ever did. The sentence echoed again in my mind, louder now. That damn message. That key. That man I'd never met, but who knew enough to leave this behind. My fingers dug into the mattress. Something swelled in my chest, pressure pushing hard behind my ribs. He knew me. All these years, and he'd known. I pulled the photo closer, staring at the curve of her face, the joy in her grin. My fingers trembled. I'd never seen her this young. I'd only had one other photo of her, a blurry bent snapshot they found in her belongings when she died. But this was her before the world hurt her, before it hurt me. A floorboard creaked behind me, but it was just the wind slipping through the old house. Still, I stood and walked to the last door at the end of the hallway. The master bedroom. It was large, spare, and cold. The mattress had been removed, leaving only a wooden bed frame, a dresser, a closet door hanging slightly open. The dust here was heavier, undisturbed, as if no one had entered this room since Robert left it. I didn't linger. Back downstairs, I lit a candle I found tucked in a drawer, set it on the coffee table, and finally sat with the letter in my lap. I unfolded it with care, fingers brushing over the indentation of his handwriting. My dearest Noah, if you're reading this, it means you found your way to Sweetwater. You made it. That means more than you know. My name is Robert Carter. I'm your grandfather. I know we've never met, and I know because of that you might wonder why I left you anything at all. But you need to understand something, son. I didn't know you existed until it was too late to do anything about it. Your mother, June, was my only child. She left this place when she was 17. She was scared. She was proud. And I was too damn stubborn to go after her. We both made mistakes, and we paid for them. The letter went on, each word heavier than the last. Robert explained how he found out about me through a social worker's after June died. He'd tried to take me in, but the state had refused. Too old, too sick, too late. So instead, he left the farm for me. And a choice. I didn't want the state to control your future. I didn't want lawyers or social workers deciding your worth. I wanted you to find this place when you were ready. On your own. That way, if you chose to stay, it would be because it meant something to you, not because someone handed it to you. I read the letter 3 times, my heart pounding harder each time. When I finally folded it back, I felt something in me shift. He didn't abandon me. He prepared for me. I stood pacing the living room, needing to move. I pulled the front door open and stepped out onto the porch. The evening was settling in blue and gold, bleeding into the sky. The wind rustled through the tall grass. The barn stood in silhouette, and the tractor glinted faintly beneath the lean-to. I walked toward it. The tractor felt different in the dying light. Less like a relic, more like a message. I climbed up and sat in the worn seat. It squeaked beneath my weight, springs creaking. My hands gripped the steering wheel. Rust flaked off under my fingers. Robert had sat here, worked here, dreamed here. I closed my eyes. If he could build this from nothing, maybe I could too. That night I didn't sleep upstairs. The house still felt too big, too loud in its silence. Instead, I lay on the old couch, wrapped in the yellow blanket they'd found me in. The candle flickered beside me. The letter tucked into the pocket of my jeans. The walls didn't feel empty anymore. They felt like they were watching, waiting, remembering. When the first light of morning pushed through the curtains, I sat up and grabbed a notebook from my bag. I wrote down a list of what needed to be done: fix the porch steps, clear the overgrowth, check the plumbing, inspect the roof. I didn't know if I'd stay forever, but I was going to start acting like someone who belonged. Because maybe, just maybe, I did. Tomorrow I'd return to town and talk to the librarian, Miss Hargrove. If anyone knew more about my mother's time in Willow Creek, it'd be her. I had names now, places, a story that wasn't finished, and I intended to finish it. The bell over the library door gave a weak jingle as I stepped inside. Morning light spilled across the wooden floorboards, and the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights above felt almost comforting after the silence of Sweetwater Farm. The warmth, the smell of old pages and lemon polish, it felt like stepping into a memory that didn't quite belong to me, but still made space for me to enter. Miss Hargrove looked up from the front desk, her glasses perched low on her nose, a pencil tucked into the nest of gray curls on her head. When she saw me, she smiled in that quiet, knowing way that only librarians or old friends do. "Well," she said, setting her tea aside, "did the key open something?" "It opened everything I said." She leaned forward, interested now. "You found the farm?" I nodded and stepped closer, lowering my voice. "And the tractor?" "There was a letter from Robert." Miss Hargrove stood up slowly, as if absorbing the weight of those words. So he really did it. Did what? She waved me toward one of the side tables tucked near the history section. Come on, let's sit. There's something you should see too. We settled into the chairs. I pulled the letter from my jacket pocket and set it between us, careful not to crease it. Her fingers hovered over it, then pulled back respectfully. You read it, she asked. 3 times, she nodded. Robert came to see me once, after he found out about you. He was different, quiet but determined. He asked if we had any books on trust law. I thought it was strange at the time, but now it makes sense. He didn't tell anyone about me. He didn't tell anyone much of anything. But I think he was trying to protect you the only way he knew how. I glanced around at the shelves. I was wondering if you ever knew my mom. Her face softened, her voice dropping. June. You knew her. Better than most. She was a firecracker. Too smart for her own good. Wanted out of this town since she was 10. She'd sit right over there always with a notebook, always scribbling something. What happened to her? Miss Hargrove looked away for a second. She got pregnant. Senior year. Wouldn't say who the father was. The town turned on her quick and ugly. Her father tried to keep her home, but June, she wouldn't have it. Left before graduation. Never came back. I swallowed. She died when I was a baby. I never knew her. But at the farm, I found her room. He kept it exactly the same. Miss Hargrove didn't answer right away. Then she stood and walked behind the front desk. After a moment of rustling through a drawer, she returned with a thin journal, its red leather cover worn soft at the edges. I kept this, she said quietly. It was left in the return bin one night, no note, no explanation. I recognized the handwriting. I reached for it with trembling hands. Inside the first page was dated when June was 16. Are you sure I can? She'd want you to, Miss Hargrove said. That's why it found its way back here. I opened it slowly, like it might fall apart. June's handwriting curled across the page in loops and slants, each word sharp with feeling. The first few entries were typical school stress friend drama songs. She liked books she hated. But then the tone shifted. I haven't told anyone yet. Not even Mabel. I'm late. I took the test. I know what it means. I'm not scared, I'm furious. Because I wanted a way out, and now I've got a chain tied to me before I've even left. I looked up. She really didn't tell anyone who the father was. Miss Hargrove shook her head. Not a soul. She carried it all on her own. I turned the page. Dad found out. He thinks I've ruined my life. Maybe I have. But I'm not staying here just to rot in his disappointment. I'll figure it out on my own. I have to. The next few entries were about leaving. Scraping money together, planning where to go, avoiding anyone who asked too many questions. And then I named him Noah. It was the only name that felt right. I wrapped him in the yellow blanket Mom made me. I wanted to stay. I wanted to be enough. But I know I'm not. I'm getting weaker. I'm coughing more. It's not just exhaustion. Something's wrong and I can't afford to find out what. I stopped reading. My throat burned. She was sick, I whispered. She never came back here, but someone kept sending photos to Robert. Miss Hargrove said. He showed me once. Pictures of you, preschool, 3rd grade, your school ID 1 year. He kept them all in a folder. Said it was the only way he could watch you grow. I nodded slowly, heart thudding. At the farm, there's a second box. In the attic. I haven't opened it yet. You should, she said. The past doesn't disappear just because it's painful. Sometimes it waits, quietly, until you're ready. I closed the journal and held it to my chest. Thank you for keeping this. She was a good girl, she said. She just didn't stand a chance in this place. That made me pause. Why do you say that? Miss Hargrove hesitated. Then carefully, this town doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive easily. June broke rules, silent ones. Some people still whisper her name like it's a sin. I looked down at the journal in my hands. Then maybe it's time they remember the truth. She smiled. You sound like her. When I left the library, the sun was high and sharp. I walked back toward the edge of town where Tyler's truck was parked, my bag over my shoulder, the journal tucked safely inside. He was leaned against the driver's side arms, crossed a smudge of grease on his cheek. You find what you needed? He asked. I nodded. More than I expected. Good, he said. You look like you just read something that cracked you open. I did. We got in the truck. The ride back to Sweetwater was quiet but not heavy. I kept glancing at the journal, flipping pages without reading them, just tracing the ink with my fingers. When we got to the farm, I asked Tyler, You ever been in the attic? He raised an eyebrow. Not a chance. I don't go places where spiders got voting rights. I laughed first time in days. Then I guess it's on me. He leaned on the truck door. Well, if you find anything haunted, just yell loud. I'll come running. Eventually. I climbed the stairs in the farmhouse with the journal clutched in one hand and a flashlight in the other. The attic hatch was in the hallway ceiling, a pull-down ladder that groaned under my weight. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and insulation. Cobwebs clung to the rafters like old regrets. In the far corner beneath a stack of broken picture frames was a metal box. It was locked, but not tightly. The latch rusted soft and gave with a twist. Inside photographs. Dozens. June's childhood. Her birthday parties. A few grainy pictures of her with Robert. And then, me. Infant me. Toddler me. Kindergarten me. Beneath the photos, letters. Stamped. Never mailed. Some opened and torn. Some never finished. I pulled one out, unfolded it slowly. He deserves a home even if I couldn't give it to him. The paper shook in my hands. I sat down on the attic floor, surrounded by proof that I was never forgotten. I was just being waited on. The sound of a hammer echoed off the barn walls as I pried a rusted hinge from the back door. Morning light filtered through the slats, warming the dust in the air. I'd spent the last 2 days cleaning, sweeping out decades of dirt, clearing the overgrown porch, ripping rotted curtains off their ronces. It didn't make the place new, but it made it breathe again. Still, it wasn't enough. Fixing broken floorboards and mending a fence line didn't change what Sweetwater was underneath, the kind of place that had been left behind by more than just one person. My mom. Robert. Maybe even me. For years, I didn't know better. I stood and stretched my back, wincing as my muscles ached. My hands were blistered, but they felt more useful than they ever had. I wiped the sweat from my brow, turned toward the house, and saw Tyler's truck pull up the drive, kicking up gravel behind it. He leaned out the window before the engine even stopped. Someone's looking for you. My stomach tightened. Who, lawyer? McBride. Said she's got something you need to sign. I grabbed my flannel off the railing, dusted off my jeans, and climbed into the truck. Tyler glanced over at me but didn't say much. He didn't have to. He could feel the shift in the air, too, like something was about to settle, or maybe stir up worse. When we pulled up outside Harrison and McBride, Estelle was already waiting on the front steps, her sunglasses perched on her head, a leather folder tucked under one arm. "Noah," she called, motioning me inside. "Got a minute?" I followed her into the office, and she shut the door behind us, this time without her usual warm smile. She gestured for me to sit across from her desk. I did. She sat slowly, opened the folder, and smoothed her hands across the pages. "Your grandfather's trust had more than just legal property terms," she said. "There was an additional clause we hadn't activated yet. A final condition." My heart started ticking a little louder. "Condition." She looked at me evenly. "Robert wanted to make sure that whoever inherited Sweetwater didn't just stumble into it. He wanted commitment. So while the title will transfer into your name, there's a stipulation. You must live on the property for 30 consecutive days. No overnights away. No hotel stays. You're allowed to go into town, but the farm must remain your residence. And if I don't, the trust dissolves. The land reverts to county ownership." I leaned back in the chair, stunned. "That's a test." She nodded. "His words exactly. If he makes it 30 days, it's his, because that means he's willing to stay when it's hard." I wasn't even mad. I kind of respected it. "I'm already living there," I said. "I'm not planning to leave." "Good. Then this won't be a problem." I signed the paperwork, my name steady on the line this time. Not tentative. Not borrowed. Mine. Estelle slid the final page toward me. "This one makes it official. Sweetwater becomes yours in full on the 30th day. Until then, I'll be checking in weekly." I nodded. Understood. As I stood to leave, she said quietly, "He really did believe in you, you know. He told me once. I don't need him to be perfect. I just need him to come back." I didn't have words for that. I left the office with my mind spinning. In the truck, Tyler didn't ask right away, just drove. Finally, halfway up Miller Road, I said I have to stay. For 30 days. Non-negotiable. That a problem? I looked out the window. "No, just means it's real now." He smirked. "Now you've been cleaning mouse crap out of the pantry for 2 days. What part of this didn't feel real already?" I laughed, the sound surprising both of us. "Fair." We spent the rest of the day clearing brush along the east fence line. Tyler showed me how to use a chainsaw badly and taught me how to repair a gate latch without duct tape. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt good, honest. As the sun dipped low, painting the hills orange and violet, we sat on the porch steps, drinking lemonade he'd bought in town. My shirt stuck to my back with sweat, my arms ached, but I was breathing easier than I had in years. "You ever think about staying here?" I asked him. Tyler took a long sip before answering. "I used to. But towns like Willow Creek don't always have room for people who don't fit the mold." "What mold?" "Straight, white, God-fearing, and quiet," he said, glancing sideways at me. I let that hang in the air for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Sounds familiar." We didn't say anything else, but I think something shifted between us after that. Not friendship yet, but the beginning of it. Later that night, I sat by the fireplace with the journal open in my lap. June's words ran across the pages like breathless thoughts, frantic and raw. "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to be a mother. But I know I want to keep him safe. And if I can't do that with my hands, maybe I can do it with this key." There was a name she mentioned once, Rachel. Someone who helped her get to Savannah. A friend, maybe. or more. I underlined the name in the journal. Maybe Miss Hargrove knew who she was. Maybe she was still out there. Another thread in the story I was still stitching together. Outside, the wind picked up. The house creaked, not like it was falling apart, but like it was shifting awake after a long sleep. I lit another candle and walked the hallway upstairs, stopping by June's room. I pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. I stood in the center, letting the silence speak. You don't heal a house by sweeping floors. You heal it by filling it with life again. I said it out loud, though I wasn't sure where the words came from. Then I walked to the window and opened it wide. Let the fresh air in. The knock came just after noon, sharp and sudden against the old wood of the front door. I was upstairs in the lavender room sorting through a box of children's books I'd found in the attic. Half of them still with the library card pockets glued inside the covers. I froze my hand resting on a copy of The Velveteen Rabbit, wondering who would come all the way out here without calling first. I headed down the stairs, cautiously wiping dust off my hands and tucking June's journal into my back pocket. When I opened the door, a woman in her late 20s stood there, arms crossed, a denim jacket thrown over a floral dress, her auburn curls swept up in a loose knot. She looked nervous, like she'd debated coming all the way up the driveway. "Hi," she said, voice unsure. "I'm sorry to just show up. My name's Rachel. Rachel Grayson. My grandmother was friends with Robert Carter. I heard someone was living here again." I blinked. Rachel. The name I'd underlined in June's journal just the night before. My pulse spiked. Yeah. I'm Noah Carter." Her eyes softened a little. "So it's true. You knew my mom," Rachel hesitated. "Not directly, but I know her story, or at least the version that made its way around town." She glanced behind her toward the fields. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, still in a daze. "Yeah. Of course." We sat at the kitchen table. I offered her a glass of lemonade, which she accepted. She looked around as she sipped, her eyes pausing on the chipped cabinets and crooked light fixture like they held history only she could see. "This place looks the same," she said, "even after all these years. You've been here before as a kid. My grandmother worked for the Carters for a while back when June was little. She used to bring me here sometimes. I'd play out by the pond while she cleaned or cooked. I barely remember it, but something about the porch. It just stuck." I leaned forward, the weight of the journal pressing against my spine. "Rachel, do you know why June really left? I mean, I've read her journal. I've pieced things together. But no one ever talks about what happened before." Rachel exhaled slowly, setting her glass down. "People in Willow Creek don't like to talk about things that make them uncomfortable. June got pregnant, wouldn't say who the father was, and suddenly she went from being Robert's daughter to being the girl no one made eye contact with at the diner. She mentioned being pushed out." "It was worse than that," Rachel said. "My grandmother told me people talked. Whispers, assumptions, judgment. Robert tried to shield her, but he was just one man. She was 17, and there was something else." She paused. What she said, the town turned faster than anyone expected, because of who the father might have been. I felt my stomach twist. "What do you mean?" Rachel looked at me carefully. "Your mom was close to a guy named Elijah McCoy. Black kid, smart, worked with his dad fixing farm equipment. The McCoys lived outside town, never caused any trouble. But the moment someone saw them walking home from school together too close, things got tense. The name hit like a memory I didn't have. I hadn't read that in the journal. Maybe June hadn't written it down on purpose." Rachel continued quieter now. "No one ever confirmed anything. June never told. But people made assumptions, and when she started showing, it was over. They sent Elijah's family packing. His dad's shop got mysteriously burned down. They moved within a week, and my mom. She held her head high, but she was gone 2 weeks later. She left in the middle of the night. My grandmother always believed she'd planned it for months. I leaned back in my chair, overwhelmed. She never talked about Elijah in her journal. Not by name. Rachel nodded. Maybe she was protecting him, or maybe it just hurt too much. The room felt smaller now, not just because of what Rachel had said, but because of what it meant. I wasn't just an accident. I was a reason people got hurt, a reminder of how far hate could reach. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, though it felt hollow. "Yeah, just piecing things together." Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. She slid it across the table to me. It was grainy old, clearly scanned from a print. A boy with dark skin, a wide grin, and a girl, June. Arm linked through his. Her head tilted toward his shoulder, both of them laughing, like the world hadn't touched them yet. "They look happy," I said, my voice low. They were. I stared at the photo for a long time. My mother had loved someone worth risking everything for. And she lost him. And I lost a piece of her I never knew existed. Rachel stood after a while, sensing I needed space. "I didn't come here to dig up ghosts," she said softly. "But I thought you deserved the truth. Not the town's version." "I'm glad you did," I said. "Really?" She offered a faint smile. "If you ever want to talk, I work at the pharmacy in town. Just ask for me." She left with the same quiet grace she arrived. After she was gone, I sat alone with the photograph and June's journal, flipping to the blank pages near the end. My pen hovered before I started writing notes, dates, names, threads connecting people who'd been silenced or erased. This farm, this legacy, wasn't just mine to inherit. It was mine to reclaim. For her. For them. That night, I walked the perimeter of the property, letting the stars guide me. I passed the barn, the pond, the tractor, each piece of Sweetwater, now part of a much bigger story. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about surviving the remembering. I said it aloud. As I reached the porch, the wind catching the words like they belonged to the land itself. And somehow I believed it. The morning after Rachel's visit, I stood in June's old room, staring at the dresser I'd avoided touching for days. I'd cleaned every other corner of this house, scrubbed floors, repainted window frames, even fixed the porch swing. But this one drawer, the top right one, had remained shut. Not locked. Just sealed in the kind of way that didn't need a key, sealed by memory. By silence. But not today. I slid it open. It creaked as if protesting the break in stillness. Inside, folded neatly, was a stack of papers and an old leather-bound envelope. The smell of aged paper and lavender soap drifted out her scent. Beneath the envelope, I found something stranger, a set of blueprints. Not for the house, for a building I'd never seen. It was titled in neat cursive, Sweetwater Community Center. Proposal draft. My heart caught in my chest. I sat on the edge of her bed and opened the envelope first. Inside, a letter addressed to no one. Not to me. Not to Robert. It read more like a journal entry than a farewell. I dreamed of making this place a home again, one that welcomed people who didn't have anywhere else. A place for the tired, the outcasts, the left behind. I don't know if I'll live long enough to see it happen, but I hope someone will. I hope my son will. I gripped the pages like they were the last living part of her. Her dream wasn't just to escape Willow Creek. It was to change it. to carve out something better than the ugliness that drove her away. And now she'd passed that hope to me without ever saying my name. The blueprint pages were hand-drawn, marked with ideas for a shared library room, a kitchen sleeping quarters, a garden out back. Notes in the margins, free food on Sundays, no IDs required, safe space for teens. She hadn't just imagined this. She'd planned it. And I'd been scraping mold off the pantry door like that was enough to honor her. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my pocket. Then I grabbed the blueprints and went to find Tyler. He was already in the field fixing a busted fence post, his hands covered in dirt and wire. He looked up when I called his name. "Jesus, you look like you just saw a ghost," he said, straightening. I held out the rolled pages. "I found these in June's dresser. It's a proposal. She wanted to turn Sweetwater into a community center." He took the pages, brows raised, and unrolled them slowly. "Damn," he murmured. "This is actually really smart." She didn't just run away. She had a vision, a reason. Tyler looked up. "And you think maybe you're the reason it didn't die with her?" I nodded. "It feels like more than just inheritance now. Feels like a responsibility." He handed the papers back. "Well, then you better start building." We spent the next few hours sketching ideas, where we'd put the community garden, how we'd clear out the barn, who we might ask for help. Tyler knew a guy named Manny who worked construction out near Dawsonville, retired but handy. I remembered Miss Hargrove once mentioning a women's book club full of church ladies who could organize faster than a military unit if motivated. Word spreads fast in towns like Willow Creek. By the time we drove into town to grab supplies, people were already whispering. "You hear the Carter boys trying to fix the farm. Wants to turn it into some kind of shelter," they say. Charity case, more like. But there were other voices, too. A man at the hardware store named Frank offered me a discount on lumber. Said Robert once helped him after a flood nearly took his house. A teenage girl outside the gas station gave me a folded flyer, handwritten with a list of local groups who needed a space for meetings. Change was beginning. Not loud, not fast, but real. Back at Sweetwater, I cleared out the barn with Tyler until sunset. We opened the doors wide, let the light pour in. Dust danced in the beams like gold flecks in water. I could almost see what June saw, people gathered here laughing, healing, starting over. That night, I sat under the stars with the blueprint pages beside me, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, heart full of something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. This land isn't mine to keep. It's mine to give. I wrote it down in my notebook. The words June had written once. Now they were mine. The next day, I returned to town alone to see Miss Hargrove. She greeted me with her usual gentle smile, but raised an eyebrow when she saw the folder under my arm. Blueprints, she guessed, amused. Dreams, I said. June's. We sat at the same table near the history section where we first talked. I laid out the blueprints and the letter. She read in silence, one hand on her tea, the other on the table as her eyes moved across the page. When she finished, she looked up, eyes shimmering. "I always knew she was trying to leave something behind," she said softly. "I just didn't know how much." "I want to finish it," I said. "Not just fix the house. I want to make it what she imagined. A home for people like her. Like me." Miss Hargrove reached across the table and touched my hand. "Then you're already doing it." When I returned to Sweetwater that evening, a note was pinned to the front door. It was written in red pen on lined paper. "You're not the only one who remembers what this place stood for. Let me know if you need help. Manny." Underneath was a phone number. And just like that, it began. A legacy rebuilt one piece at a time. The flyer showed up on the bulletin board outside the grocery store, posted right above the announcements for church bake sales and tractor repairs. In bold black letters it read, Town Meeting, Sweetwater Farm Redevelopment, Thursday 6 p.m. at the Community Hall. Below that, in smaller print, all voices welcome, all opinions heard. Tyler read it first. He walked into the barn where I was sorting through old garden tools and held it up like it was a piece of evidence. So it's official. The town wants to talk. About the project, about you, about June, about everything. My chest tightened. I knew this was coming. I'd started something too big to ignore. People were showing up now, helping, donating tools, offering supplies. The foundation for the new greenhouse was already marked out behind the barn. Hope was taking shape, and for some folks in Willow Creek that was threatening. "They're not all on board, huh?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Tyler shrugged. Some are excited. Some are just curious. But others, they remember things differently. Or they want to. "I should be the one to speak," I said. "Tell the truth. All of it." "You sure you're ready for that?" I didn't answer. Because ready didn't matter. Only right did. Thursday came fast. I wore my best flannel, clean-pressed collar sharp and carried June's journal in my coat pocket close enough to feel the weight of her words against my ribs. I didn't need to quote it. I just needed to remember. The community hall buzzed with the low hum of voices when I arrived. It smelled like old wood strong coffee and 1,000 small-town arguments. Folding chairs were set up in neat rows. At least 50 people had come. I caught Miss Hargrove's eye near the front. She gave me a reassuring nod. Rachel was there too, arms crossed, standing in the back. Even Manny had showed up leaning against the wall like he'd been built into it. A woman from the town council, a prim, tight-lipped woman named Lorraine, stood at the podium and tapped the mic. "Let's bring this meeting to order," she said. "As you've probably heard, Robert Carter's grandson has returned to Sweetwater and is undertaking renovations. There's been interest and concern about the direction of these changes. Tonight we invite Mr. Noah Carter to speak on his intentions for the property." Every head turned toward me. I stood slowly and walked to the front, heartbeat loud in my ears. The mic squeaked when I adjusted it. "Hi. I'm Noah," I began, voice steady. "You all know the name. Maybe not me. I didn't grow up here. I didn't even know this place existed until a few weeks ago. But it turns out my mother did." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Her name was June Carter, and she was 17 when she left Willow Creek. She left because this town made her feel small, ashamed, and unsafe. She was pregnant, and she was brave, and she was mine. I took a breath, scanned the room. I'm not here to reopen old wounds. I'm here because my grandfather left me Sweetwater with a choice to walk away like he and June once did, or to stay and make something better out of it. I chose to stay. I unrolled the blueprints onto the podium. "She dreamed of this," I said. "A place for people who don't belong anywhere else. For the hungry, the tired, the kids who feel like ghosts in their own homes. Sweetwater can be that place. Not just a farm. A future." Silence. Then a sharp voice from the back. Male. Grizzled. "Why should we trust the word of a woman who ran away and never came back?" I didn't flinch. Because she wasn't lying. You just didn't want to hear her. He started to reply, but someone else cut in, a woman in her 50s I didn't recognize. "I remember June. I was in her class. She was smart and kind, and this town was cruel to her. A few more murmurs of agreement, but then Lorraine leaned into the mic. And what about the rumors that the child's father was a McCoy? Are you confirming that, Mr. Carter? The room shifted. Eyes sharpened. Breath caught. I stared at her for a long moment. Yes, I said. That's what the journal says. His name was Elijah, and my mother loved him. A murmur rose, a mix of shock and discomfort. Some people stood straighter. Others looked down at their hands. She wasn't ashamed, I continued. You were. That landed. Hard. Miss Hargrove stood then. And it's long past time we faced that truth. What we did. What we let happen. Rachel joined her arms still crossed but her chin high. He's not asking for approval. He's offering change. Someone clapped. Then another. And slowly the crowd shifted. Not everyone. But enough. Lorraine pursed her lips and spoke again. Even if the council supports this, there are legal hurdles. Permits. Zoning. I'll do it the right way, I said. But I'm not going away. Afterward, people lingered. Some shook my hand. Others kept their distance. But nobody shouted. Nobody stormed out. That was a win. Outside, under the parking lot, lights, Tyler found me leaning against his truck. You sure know how to drop a bomb. I smiled faintly. Truth's only dangerous if you're still trying to hide from it. He nodded. You think they'll back you? Some will, some won't. But at least now they see me. Tyler looked at me. And if they dig deeper, if someone starts asking about June's final years, the stuff that didn't make the journal, I tensed. Why? Because I heard something. About someone who used to send Robert those photos of you. Someone who might have known June at the end. I turned to him, heart racing. Who? He hesitated. Her name's Marie. She used to work at the shelter in Savannah. That name. I'd seen it once scribbled in the corner of a postcard June had kept. A return address I never followed up on. Then I need to find her, I said. He nodded. Already looked her up, she's still there. I stared out at the dark stretch of road ahead, feeling everything shift again. The past wasn't done revealing itself, and I wasn't done asking. Savannah felt like a different country. The air was thicker, the colors warmer, the streets older and more worn. Spanish moss dripped from the oak trees like tired secrets. I hadn't been in the city 10 minutes before I understood why June came here. Why she stayed. It was a place built for escape, wide enough to disappear in quiet, enough to keep your pain private. The shelter sat on the corner of an old brick block tucked between a faded laundromat and a church with cracked, stained glass windows. It wasn't flashy, no signs, just a metal door with chipped blue paint and a handwritten paper taped inside the window that read, "Closed Sundays. Ring bell for urgent needs." I rang the bell. A minute passed. Then the door opened with a tired creak, and a woman in her 60s stepped out. Short gray curls, worn jean sweatshirt with a faded peace symbol. She looked at me with the kind of guarded curiosity that only comes from years of being lied to. You lost kid? No, ma'am. I'm looking for someone. Marie Hastings. She paused, studying me. Depends who's asking. My name's Noah Carter, I said. I think you knew my mother. June. Her face changed like a shutter opening. Not surprise. Recognition. You better come in. The shelter was quiet inside. Dim, clean but weathered. The kind of place where everything had been scrubbed one too many times, where the chairs didn't match, but were arranged with care. We sat in a back office that smelled faintly of lemon oil and printer ink. Marie leaned back in her chair, hands folded. "I remember her," she said finally. "She came through here about 24 years ago. Pregnant, exhausted, told me she needed a place for a few nights. We ended up giving her a job. She worked here, she did everything. Cooked, cleaned, listened. She was good with the girls, especially the ones who'd been kicked out of their homes." Her voice softened. She understood them. I pulled the journal from my bag, set it gently on the table. "She mentioned you once, by name." Marie stared at it, didn't reach for it. She never told me where she went after I said. "I found pictures, letters, but they were never sent." Do you know why Marie looked down then away, her throat moving as she swallowed? She wanted to. God, she wanted to. She wrote dozens of drafts, kept them in a shoebox. Every few weeks she'd say she was going to send them, and then she wouldn't. Why? She was sick, Noah. I froze. Marie nodded. Lupus. Aggressive. She didn't have insurance, barely had time between shifts, and she was scared. Not just of dying, of leaving you alone, of what kind of future you'd have if she dragged you down with her illness. I wouldn't have cared, I said too quickly. Too late. She did, Marie said. She believed the best thing she could do was give you a clean start. So she made arrangements. I leaned forward. Arrangements. She found a woman, a friend of mine in Atlanta, had a private network that helped place kids with families not official but safe. June made her promise you'd be raised far from Willow Creek. No adoption. Just a clean record, a new name. And then she left. Left, she didn't want to die in front of you, Marie said quietly. So she checked herself into a hospice alone. No name on the forms, just initials. She didn't want to be found. The room seemed to fall away. She was 23, I whispered. Marie nodded. She was more afraid of giving me pain than of dying alone. She wasn't trying to erase herself, Noah. She was trying to spare you. But that's the thing about love, it always leaves a mark. You can't hide from it. I sat there in silence, the weight of her choices settling into my bones. All this time I thought I'd been forgotten. I was never forgotten. I was protected. She wanted to come back, Marie said, her voice gentler now. She told me once, if I get better, I'll take him back to Sweetwater. We'll fix what my father and I both broke. She never got the chance, I said. Marie reached into a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. But she left this. She made me promise I'd give it to you if you ever found me. I took it slowly. My hands trembled as I turned it over. My name was written in her handwriting. Noah. I didn't know if you'd ever show up, Marie said. But I hoped. I waited until I got back to the motel before opening it. The letter inside was only one page, short, but every word landed with the force of a lifetime. My sweet boy, if you're reading this, I'm gone and I'm sorry. I wanted more time. I wanted to see your face when you learned the truth. I wanted to answer your questions, hold your hand when you were angry, tell you stories when you couldn't sleep. You are not a mistake. You are not a burden. You are the best thing I ever did. If you ever go back to Sweetwater, don't just live in that house. Fill it. Let it be something better than it was. For the ones like me. For the ones like you. You are not alone. Not now. Not ever. Love always, Mom. I read it 5 times, then a 6th. Then I pressed it to my chest and let myself cry in a way I hadn't since I was a child. She hadn't just left me. She had left me something. The next morning, I returned to the shelter and hugged Marie without a word. She held on tightly. I gave her a copy of the blueprint, told her about the renovations, the meeting, the volunteers. "I think you already started this place," I said. "I just get to finish it." Marie smiled, tears in her eyes. "Then finish it well." As I drove back to Willow Creek, the letter sat beside me on the passenger seat, flapping in the wind of the cracked window like a flag. I wasn't running from her memory anymore. I was walking straight into it. The rain came down hard the night before the open house. It wasn't the soft southern drizzle I'd gotten used to. It was angry, urgent, and fast. The kind of rain that washed away loose things if they weren't tied down. I sat on the porch in the dark, watching water pour off the eaves, the letter from June, still folded in my pocket like a prayer. Tomorrow, Sweetwater would open its doors. Not just to neighbors or curious townies, but to the people June dreamed of, the drifters, the forgotten, the ones like me who'd needed somewhere once. I should have felt proud. Instead, something sat heavy in my chest, like a story that hadn't finished being told. At dawn, I walked the property before anyone arrived. Tyler had built new benches behind the greenhouse. Manny's crew had added lighting along the paths. Miss Hargrove had boxes of books waiting to go into the reading nook. It was all coming together. But something still felt unfinished. I was in the barn checking the power for the coffee station when I heard a car crunch onto the gravel. It wasn't Tyler. It wasn't Rachel. It was a dark blue sedan with government plates, and the man who stepped out looked like someone who hadn't smiled in 20 years. He was tall, black suit, salt and pepper beard, and eyes like iron. "You know a Carter?" he asked without offering a hand. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. I'm Leonard McCoy, Elijah's uncle." My blood turned cold. He stepped closer, eyes scanning the property like it was familiar. "I heard about the renovations, the town meetings, the speech you gave." My nephew's name came up. "I didn't mean to." "I'm not here to accuse," he said, holding up a hand. "I'm here to fill in the blanks." We sat at the picnic table beneath the oak tree June had once carved her initials into. Leonard pulled a worn envelope from his coat and laid it on the table. "Elijah died in 2005, he said flatly. "Car accident outside Baton Rouge. He was 26. I didn't breathe. "He never stopped looking for her," Leonard continued. "Your mother, June. He wrote letters, tracked shelters, asked people in every damn town we passed through. But he never found her." I swallowed hard. She didn't hide from him out of hate. "I know," Leonard said. "But she didn't reach out either." That haunted him. He slid the envelope toward me. "Before he died, he left this. Said if I ever found the kid, she had the kid he thought might be his, I was to give it to him." My hands shook as I took it. Inside were two things, a photo and a letter. The photo was of Elijah, older than the one in June's journal, standing next to a rusted pickup truck, smiling like he hadn't given up yet. The letter was addressed simply to the boy I never got to meet. I didn't open it yet. I couldn't. Leonard watched me, then said, "You're not responsible for the silence between them. But you are what's left of both of them now." I looked at him, this man who had buried his nephew and still carried the grief like it was fresh. "I don't know how to honor someone I never knew," I admitted. "You already are," he said, "by building something that helps people. That's what Elijah wanted too. He used to talk about turning his shop into a training center for kids, give them skills, give them a shot." I nodded slowly. "That's what Sweetwater is now." Or it will be. Leonard stood. Then don't let the past keep you from the future. That's what killed both of them, grief too heavy to carry, and pride too deep to admit it. Before he left, he looked me square in the eye. This land. It's not just your inheritance. It's a second chance. Don't waste it. He drove off without another word. I sat there for a long time with Elijah's letter in my hands. I didn't open it, not yet. But I knew what I would do with it. By noon, the sky had cleared. The rain left behind clean air and a sparkling layer of dew across the grass. People started arriving slow at first, then in steady groups. Locals, volunteers, a few families from neighboring towns, even a few teens I recognized from the shelter Rachel worked with. The doors to Sweetwater were open wide and life filled it again. I gave a short speech, thank yous, hopes, the vision we were still building toward. I didn't mention June. I didn't mention Elijah. Not by name. But I said something that mattered. We're not here to erase the past, I told them. We're here to grow from it. This land holds a lot of old stories, some painful, some unfinished. But it's time to write new ones. Applause followed. Not roaring, but enough. Later that evening, after the guests were gone and the sun had set, I stood by the garden beds with Rachel Tyler and Miss Hargrove. Manny played soft music from a radio in the barn, some blues tune that matched the hum in the air. You did it, Rachel said. I shook my head. We did it. Tyler smirked. What now? I looked out over the land, where the porch lights glowed, and laughter from inside still echoed faintly. We keep going, I said. We build. We rest. We take care of this place. Of each other. Miss Hargrove touched my arm. And what about Robert? I turned toward the house, the outline of it clear in the moonlight. I still have questions, I said. About the letters. About the choices he made. About why he didn't do more for June. But I think maybe I need to ask them not out of anger, but out of love. And tomorrow I would. Because in the attic there was still a locked trunk. And I had a key I hadn't tried yet. The attic door groaned open like it had been waiting. Morning light cut across the dust hanging in the air, and every step I took on the creaky wood felt heavier than the last. This was the one place I hadn't touched. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I knew whatever was waiting here would be the final thread. Robert's trunk sat in the far corner under a canvas tarp, rust clinging to the lock. But the key I found on the tractor fit perfectly. It turned with a reluctant click. I knelt and opened it. Inside were stacks of folders, old letters, photographs bundled in string, and a leather-bound notebook with Robert's initials stamped in gold. I lifted the notebook and turned to the first page. Noah, if you're reading this, then Sweetwater is yours now. I wish I could have told you more in person. I wish I'd done more when I still had time. But life doesn't always hand us clean chances to say the things that matter. This farm has been many things, a home, a burden, a refuge. And for too long I let my shame build walls instead of bridges. I sat down right there on the attic floor, the letter trembling in my hands as I continued to read. Your mother June was the bravest person I ever knew. When she told me she was pregnant, I failed her. Not with words, but with silence. I told myself I was protecting her by keeping quiet, by avoiding the fight with the town, with tradition, with the world. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. And in doing so, I lost her. I turned the page. His handwriting was slower now, shakier. I followed her life from a distance, donations sent through shelters, letters I never mailed, photographs others took. I saw you grow from a baby into a young man, even if you never saw me. You were never forgotten, Noah. I just didn't believe I deserved to be part of your life. I wiped my face, not realizing I'd started crying. If there is one thing I ask, it is this: forgive me for the silence, but don't carry it forward. Let Sweetwater become what it was always meant to be, not a monument to our regrets, but a place of hope. I folded the letter and held it to my chest. For a long time, I just sat there, surrounded by the ghosts of paper and ink and choices too long delayed. And then slowly, I put everything back in the trunk, except for one thing, a photo I hadn't seen before. It was of June Robert and a baby in her arms. Me. We were sitting on the front porch of this house. June looked tired, but her smile was soft, Robert's hand resting protectively on her shoulder. He hadn't always been absent. He just didn't know how to stay. That afternoon, I hung the photo in the main hallway just above the welcome table. Visitors passed it on their way into Sweetwater now. Whether they stopped to look was their choice. But it was there. By the end of the week, we'd served our first dinner in the new community kitchen. Tyler grilled chicken on an old drum smoker. Rachel ran the pantry inventory like a general. Miss Hargrove hosted a reading circle under the oak tree. A kid named Jamal started tending the garden every morning before school. A retired teacher named Mrs. Day brought paint and transformed the eastern barn wall into a mural of hands holding a sun. Sweetwater was no longer quiet. It laughed. It lived. I sat with Leonard McCoy again one evening, this time on the porch, both of us nursing sweet tea. He watched the lights flicker in the distance. Elijah would have liked this, he said. I nodded. So would June. We didn't speak for a long time after that. Some moments don't need words. Just witness. Later, I walked out to the edge of the field, just beyond the tractor path. The stars were out again, clear and burning, like they only do in places without noise. I pulled Elijah's letter from my pocket, the one I still hadn't read, and opened it under the sky. Noah. If you're reading this, then maybe the silence finally ended. Maybe someone told you my name. Maybe your mother's story made its way home. I don't know what you'll think of me. I was 17, scared and stupidly hopeful. But if there's anything I want you to know, it's that you came from love. Not scandal. Not shame. Love. If life gives you pain, and it will, I hope you turn it into something bigger than yourself. Something that helps others. Something that lasts. That's all I ever wanted. That and to hold you. Just once. Wherever you are, I'm proud of you. Elijah. I folded the letter and looked up. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of tilled earth and blooming clover. And in that moment, I didn't feel like I was alone. Not anymore. Months passed. We opened the second greenhouse. Tyler taught a carpentry class. Rachel moved into the old caretaker's cottage and turned it into a counseling space. We received our nonprofit registration from the state. Sweetwater was now officially a place that belonged to everyone. One night, a little boy, maybe 6, tugged on my sleeve after dinner and pointed at the photo on the hallway wall. "Is that your mom?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, crouching beside him. "That's her. And that's my grandpa. You look happy." I smiled. We were, for a while. He nodded like that made sense, then ran off to join the others. I watched him go, the sound of laughter bouncing off the rafters. And I thought, this is what she wanted. Not a perfect ending, but a beginning. A place where silence didn't win. Where love was louder than shame. Where stories broken, unfinished, mended, had somewhere to land. And somehow, against all odds, I had become the keeper of that place. Not because I was brave, not because I was chosen, but because I stayed. And staying, it turns out, was enough.